Hey guys, it's Mitch. How's it going? We're doing another issue of Spawn today. It's Spawn number 9, otherwise known as the issue written by Neil Gaiman. So two massive egos are going to work together on this. I'm sure everything will work out fine. Oh, are they suing each other again? No? Okay, that's good. Okay. So just before we get into it, if you enjoy the channel, if you feel like you might want to help out a little bit, what you can do is in the description, there's a link to my Patreon. And if you subscribe there, that'll give you access to everything I do, from the Blood Force stuff to the YouTube videos before they get uploaded to YouTube, as well as some Patreon exclusive content. So we all know what the deal with this is by now. Todd McFarlane got 7 issues into his new comic book and decided he needed to make a splash and maybe needed some incoming ideas. So what he did was he hired 4 established, celebrated writers, at least in some circles, and invited them each to write 1 issue of Spawn. And by invited, I mean he paid them, obviously. And he hyped it up to no end, and each of the writers came in on essentially a work-for-hire basis. And most of the writers just gave Todd interesting little one-and-done kind of issues. So we've already seen Alan Moore's version, where he just kind of gives you a brief glimpse of hell and what's going to happen to Billy Kincaid. And beyond that issue, Alan Moore didn't give Todd a whole lot. Like, he gave him the Vindicator, he gave him, I suppose, the Tower. I don't know if that ever came back. And he gave him the 5 Fleabag brothers, or Fleabag. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Dave Sim didn't bother with the Spawn world. He wrote a sort of parable about self-publishing. And Frank Miller wrote some Frank Miller shit that nobody other than Frank Miller would ever bother revisiting. But Neil Gaiman kind of couldn't help himself. I assume Neil Gaiman was used to working with professionals at this point, which is not exactly how you would describe Todd in 1993. Professional comic book artist? Sure. Professional comic book publisher? Fuck no. So, assuming that everything was on the up and up, Neil Gaiman wrote Todd McFarlane a mythology. So, the crux of this issue is Spawn versus Angela. And Angela is, of course, an angel. And because Neil Gaiman can't help himself and can't help, just putting proof out there that he's like a storytelling genius, he had to come up with everything associated with those particular elements. So he gave Spawn a concept of what angels should be like in the Spawn world, concept of what heaven is like in the Spawn world. He gave him an idea for what to do with medieval Spawn. He solidified the framework of the war between heaven and hell. And he gave him a mysterious figure in Cagliostro for Todd to kind of endlessly plunder. But we're probably getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. We should just kind of start with the issue here, starting with the cover. So I've mentioned this cover before. One weird little coincidence, assuming that I've done the math right and that I haven't fucked with the lineup at all, this should be the 300th video I've produced. And one of the, interesting side effects of doing 300 videos is that in addition to the usual kind of videos I make, so obviously the revisits, the page commentaries, the live streams, and the hyper pages, there's also a fair amount of weird little niche videos kind of tucked away back there. I don't know if anybody remembers the dramatic reading of Blood Force number 1 that went out, I think I had it up for a couple of weeks before I quickly changed the visibility to unlisted. That is still available on the Patreon if anybody wants to go check that out. But I also did a top 10 image covers of 1993, which is still back there. And the Spawn number 9 cover was on that list. Even further, I declared that the best Spawn cover of 1993, on the grounds that pretty much no other Spawn cover even had anything to do with what was in the issue. There's a lot of Spawn standing, or leaping, or squatting, and looking magical, or kind of grim, or something along those lines. But yeah, no, on this one, we've got Angela standing in victory over what, if prior to reading this, you have to assume is Spawn, even though the outfit isn't quite right. And going into it, if you didn't know anything about it, that would have made for an intriguing image. It's like, okay, who's this chick with all this fucking gear hanging off of her? I guess she's gonna fight Spawn. That could be interesting. And Todd kind of went to work on the cover here. He didn't skimp. There's a fair amount of detail in here. All sorts of stuff, from the sash to all the Spawn pogs hanging off of her spear here. I just kind of made that connection, actually. One of the deals with Angela is after she kills a Spawn, it leaves behind this little coaster-looking thing with the Spawn logo on it. This is right around the time that Todd is starting to introduce his Spawn pogs. I wonder if there was anything like, yeah, make it a circle with the Spawn logo. Then the people who read the comic can, you pretend they're Spawn hunters. The only thing I'm a bit meh on the cover on is the white background. It would have been nice to get something a bit more interesting than that, but I mean, there's no need to go getting greedy or anything. This is a pretty great cover all in all. So we're going to start things off with a maiden in distress in the woods. We're not really given an indication of when this is taking place, which is fine. I think we'll get it fairly quickly. But in addition to the girl in distress, we're also going to get what appears to be an unconnected narration, which is sort of like a bestiary entry. Only in this case, it's describing hell spawns and the methods in which to hunt them. So starting off here, identification, the livery of hell. See illustrations, pages 1131 through 1150 for basic design and variants, is a sentient carapace which covers the hell spawn. Many hell spawn are shapeshifters. This is actually referring to a bit in Spawn number 8 that Alan Moore also came up with, which was that the Spawn outfit, the suit, was in fact a symbiote. So that was one more thing that Alan Moore contributed to the Spawn mythos. So in this case, the characteristics. In this manual, we shall address only Hellspawn in the worlds of the living. Hellspawn in the realms beyond are not game and cannot be hunted unless and until a formal condition of war has been declared. So we're already setting up some rules and boundaries about how heaven and hell interact. Those Hellspawn in the living worlds are, however, fair game. They are the officer material that Malbolgia considers may prove worthy of high rank in the war to come. Its usual technique is to consign them to Earth with a high, although limited, supply of power. And now we're getting descriptions of basically why Spawn is the way that he is, where he's, up until now it's been a complete mystery because Todd had no idea what to do with this character he'd come up with. Neil Gaiman came together and cobbled together some reasons based on the limited shreds that Todd had managed to come up with. And we see here a continuation from issue 8. Something I noted, when Todd isn't doing the writing, or maybe because he's got these kind of special writers coming in, he's going a little extra on the art. This is some pretty detailed shrubbery here. I mean, it's not, it's not the most detailed thing, but it's definitely above what it needed to be. When all of a sudden she's approached by a random toy design. So this is Medieval Spawn. And she tells him a story about how some ogre assaulted her and her sister. And he left her on the side of the road with her dress all torn up and took her sister back to his cave with him. So Medieval Spawn is going to go hunting the ogre for this fair maiden. And we get a bit more exposition here. Hunting methods. Young Hellspawn make the best sport. Firstly, they're often time disoriented, having been kept in stasis fields for 5 to 10 years. Our opponent has found that releasing them into what is for them their near future obliterates and confuses family and emotional connections. The young Hellspawn are often confused and emotional and respond to good or noble impulses as easily or more easily than they do to evil. This tendency can be exploited by any experienced hunter. So setting up now that the angels in this case aren't necessarily just soldiers. I mean, they will be at the time of when war is eventually called. But in the meantime, they're more big game hunters. So she guides Medieval Spawn down to this cave that she scouted out and accompanies him down to it into the dark. And he's able to light it up with a little bit of magic. Okay, and yet more of our bestiary entry. Secondly, and more importantly, the young Hellspawn has learned nothing about the harnessing and control of its abilities, some of which, particularly those concerning transmutation and reality adjustment, it may never fully learn or control. So again, here's a couple of seeds that Todd might want to use further down the line. It is a thing of raw but unfocused power, and an intelligent hunter can turn this to advantage. As Hellspawn get older, they also get wilier and more ruthless. They also become much more careful of power expenditure, something with which young Spawn are rash and reckless. And we've seen this, of course, in the first 4 issues where Spawn devoted a good quarter of his power to fireworks displays. Thirdly, by destroying Hellspawn young, a hunter is performing a valuable service. Each Hellspawn is a potential officer in the army of Hell. The discovery and empowering of a Hellspawn takes much energy and time on the part of the Malbolgia. Thus far, it has not created more than one in 50 years, and usually not more than one in a century. More rules for Todd to mess around with and kind of spitball off of. At the point where its power reservoir is exhausted, the Earthbound Hellspawn returns to the 9th level. At this point, they face the ordeal of the Dark Carcass. What's the Dark Carcass? I don't know myself. I don't know if Todd ever revisited it. I would imagine he probably did. Because, I mean, in the first 4 pages here, Todd has already gotten more. He's gotten more here than he had up until this point. Those who pass become officers in the army of hell. Those who fail become food for the soldiers of hell. Either way, the power of the male bulge has increased. Some older hellspawn can become quite desperate when they realize what waits for them at the point of power depletion, and will go through quite remarkable efforts to avoid battle, or any further depletion of energy. Again, laying groundwork. This is something you could use around issue like 75 or something if you wanted to. Only a hunter with plenty of time on her hands, a full arsenal, and a willingness to undergo a potentially lengthy period of hardship and discomfort should even consider hunting hellspawn. Hellspawn hunting is unlike other methods of hunting. Stalking a hellspawn is advisable. Learn its habits. The hellspawn, when roused, are rapid and tireless. It is wise to decoy a spawn by diverting its attention. So, I had to come up with a bit of an excuse for why she would be running around in a bikini, but there's certainly a whole lot of distraction going on here. So, this is Angela in hunter form. I'm sure there's other toy variants that probably like an armored thing, and probably a limited edition con variant where she's like just about naked. I'm sure these things exist. So, a first hard strike will often take a spawn out. Caution. In many young hellspawn, the carapace is more wily and vicious than the occupant. This must always be guarded against. Again, just little ideas for something to put in a fight later on. So we get the first thrust, which medieval spawn is able to dodge. She does follow it up, though. Grabs his cape, swings him around by it, and slams him a couple of times. Nice little fight sequence, actually. We haven't gotten a whole lot of Spawn doing a proper fight. Todd tends to, I don't know if he just runs out of gas, like, you know, he's got to conserve his time, something like that. But he's done it a couple of times where he'll just do a bunch of sound effects and then, like, blood splatters. And it's like, man, talk about fucking blue balling people. I think he did take it a little bit easier on this one. The black background helps. And these aren't the most delineated characters here. So she gets him down, gets her lance cocked here, and is able to take care of him pretty quickly. And probably the sum up line here, you're in the army. Haven't you ever wondered who you were meant to be fighting? There you go. And we get an explanation of the angel's weaponry here. So, regarding the lance in particular, once activated, it sets up a dimensional resonance that will lance the hellspawn from this level existence like pus from a boil. If the carapace is left behind at this point, it will be in a weakened condition and easily terminated. Then all you need to do is take your trophy back and bask in the praise and admiration of your fellow hunters. So she kills the cape and is able to take her pog home with her. And she's a happy girl. And again, some fun visual stuff here. Not going as heavy on the design. That said, I think Neil Gaiman does like to do some thumbnails himself from time to time. And now, 800 years later, we've got a woman walking around, probably in New York, with similarly long red hair. Now, that's a bit of an awkward transition, actually, but okay, that's fine. Spawn is waking up from a dream in which he's, I guess, in a cage somewhere with a bunch of hands grasping out. This is, of course, a rough from Spawn number 10. As a side note, I've already completed my revisit for Spawn number 10. That'll come out when it's scheduled to. But I did a team-up revisit with my buddy Jay on that one. And we talked a little bit about this scene in particular, and how in that scene, Spawn is basically standing like this, where he's straight up and down and just kind of in shadow and, you know, not really indicating that anything's affecting him. This would have been much more effective. So Spawn wakes up from the dream. He's awakened by one of his fellow hobos. This one is a bit more like I think he's meant to be Columbo. And he advises Spawn that cops were around looking for him. They had an artist's rendition, and they were looking for information on where he might be. But the hobos had his back. They didn't tell him anything. They just kind of give him the runaround. Largely because, I mean, if you remember a few issues back, cops went screaming through an alley, killed at least one hobo, and didn't even bother to check back on him. So Spawn offers to repay them for helping him. And they're like, no, you don't have to worry about it. But then one of the hobos goes, wait. He can help us a little bit. If you could maybe, like, manifest, create a strawberry ripple, then that would work. Spawn has no idea how to do that, but the hobo walks him through it, advises him to siphon off some energy from his costume instead of just depleting his power levels. And that works, and his power levels remain the same. And this is Count Nicholas Cagliostro, who apparently knows a fair bit about, just how spawns tick. And he also knows a fair bit about this spawn in particular because he knows his name. He knows he's Mr. Simmons. But yeah, you see some of the detail he's got going on in, like, the alley here with the wrecked car and all that shit. That's some pretty great stuff. But Cagliostro here is representative of all the bums here in that they do a thing that Neil Gaiman has done from time to time. I think he did it a couple times in Sandman, where formerly famous people end up in weird places you wouldn't expect. So, for instance, on the previous page, they referenced Richard Nixon and potentially James Dean. I'm not sure. So cutting back to Angela here in the city at a big old skyscraper, and just very nice design for this page. Vertical panel, bunch of vertical panels, and then our kind of stock still shot of the character here. So she enters the building. She asks to see Gabrielle. Doesn't need an appointment. She's told she can go straight up because Gabrielle is also an angel. She is, in fact, the director of Terran Affairs, while Angela here is a freelancer. So still a big game hunter, which she follows up with by advising Gabrielle that she's gotten a hunting permit, which appears to be this little beady thing that's all shiny. So whatever that thing is, that's advised her that there's a new hellspawn active on the world. So as long as there's a hellspawn, she has the right to go kill it. But Gabrielle here gives her parameters in which she says, okay, but none of your usual, take some weeks stalking the thing. Just go down and kill the fucking thing. I don't need you making a mess on my planet. Cut back to Spawn. He's interrogating Cagliostro. Cagliostro points out that Spawn didn't think it was particularly weird when he knew about the suit. It was just when he knew his name, but okay, sure. He also knows about the Malbolgia, which is more than Spawn knows. I'm wondering now who came up with that term. I think it might be Alan Moore. Yeah, I think it was, because the only other place he would have been mentioned was in Spawn number 4, and nobody really introduces anybody in that. So there you go. There's another thing Alan Moore came up with. Okay, more than I thought. So we're also going to get an Angela poster by Jim Lee. That's nice of him. Big old vertical black and white of Angela. And he put some work into it, too. And then Todd went and inked the thing. You can tell by the moon and everything. And I mean, obviously the scroll. But yeah, nice enough shot. Didn't look like he rushed it too much. Next issue, Rob Liefeld's Blood Wolf. That does feel like a very Rob kind of thing. To be like, yeah, I know, I'll totally do a poster for your thing. Cool, thanks. Do you want like character sketches of my guy? No, I'll do my guy. Oh, sure, why not, I guess. So Cagliostro explains the deal. Spawn only knows that he did a deal with the devil. Cagliostro explains that there are multiple devils, and that everybody in this alley did a deal with a devil, and they ended up with fame and power and money and all that kind of shit, and, got everything they ever wanted, and then at the end of it, they had to be bums in the alleyways for the next however long. And is going to go into more detail, but they are interrupted here by someone who taps Spawn on the shoulder, which turns out to be Angela, confuses Spawn, and goes immediately into her Bikini Hunter variant form, and starts attacking immediately. So she's at least, she's following orders about not dragging this thing out. I mean, we only have a few pages left. Not a bad little action shot here, though, to start things off with. So she's able to stab Spawn with her lance, which seems to kind of banish his physical form, leaving just the carapace behind, as described, which she approaches, but out from the puddle of the carapace, Spawn reaches and grabs her and pulls her in. Sure. And then she's kind of stuck in the dark with him. It's a very cool shot, although there's always been a kind of case of what the fuck is even going on here. Particularly since, Gaiman went to pretty great lengths at the beginning to give us a pretty firm set of rules about what happens when you kill a hellspawn. So this is something beyond that. So I assume chokes out Angela inside the cape, and in a kind of non-physical form, she goes screaming back up to heaven. Very cool page. Nice and designy. Like, look how severe this perspective is. This is great shit. Not even remotely realistic. It's great. Spawn goes climbing up out of the puddle of himself, is confused that this was an angel that hunted him, knows he did a deal with the devil, can't quite wrap his head around the fact that, he's the devil's property now. And but she did leave behind her spear, so he picks that up and clicks the button because he's fucking stupid, which kind of teleports him out by the looks of it. And blanks out his meter, too, at that. And Cagliostro just goes, well, shit, that's a shame. Picks up his box of Ripple and wanders off. And that's the end of Spawn number 9. Oh, some more fan art here. Gotta love the stuff that's directly copied from stuff in the comics. Like, they know, right? Like, they made those comics. Yeah, get our J-Lead, Youngblood Strike File. And Freak Force, that nobody ever cared about. Wait, is there a poster in Spawn number 10? Because I remember this Jeff Darrow poster a little bit. I haven't actually looked at it in, like 30 years, but still kind of remember that thing. I don't know that I remember a Rob Liefeld poster. No, this is the middle of the book here. Yeah, so he never got around to it, I guess. Surprise, fucking prize. Oh, Shaman's Tears. Everybody's favorite, Shaman's Tears. All right, so that's it for Spawn number 9. As we saw, Neil Gaiman basically set Spawn up here. Gave him all sorts of things that Todd McFarlane could spin off from. Just even, mentioning little things here and there. That's like, oh yeah, no, I can totally make a 7-8 issue storyline out of this little thing you mentioned. Thank you. And from what I've seen from, I've checked out the odd little bit of a current issue here and there. I don't think I can bother reading any of it. He's still, referencing back to the stuff that is being introduced here. They're still going back to the Angels. They're still going back to stuff with the, like the Fleabag brothers and the Anti-Spawn and all this stuff that was set up in like the first 18 issues, largely by people other than Todd. So what was the fallout of Spawn issue 9? Oh boy. Well, from Gaiman's perspective, he was under the impression that Angela, Cagliostro, and Dark Ages Spawn, or Medieval Spawn, or whatever the fuck he's called, I think in this case he's Medieval Spawn, were co-created, co-owned by Gaiman and McFarlane. So both of them would share equally in any sort of royalties gotten from any kind of spin-off things involving those characters. Then Todd went and made figures based on Medieval Spawn and didn't bother giving Neil any money for it. So Neil does what he always does in this kind of situation. He sued. He took Todd to court for damages for, not getting his share of the royalties. Todd tried to argue that it was a work-for-hire project, and the judge informed him, you know what, you can't have work-for-hire if you don't have a contract. Because that's the problem. Todd did everything on a handshake deal basis, and then tried to screw people over. So got what was coming to him. Then further on down the line, he made other characters that were kind of based off of these guys. He did a whole bunch of stuff with Cagliostro. He made Dark Ages Spawn, which was pretty much exactly like Medieval Spawn. And he made another couple of Angels. Because, like I said, he based a whole bunch of shit off of this particular run of his comics. And Gaiman took him to court again and argued that this was all just spin-offs of work that was co-created by Todd and Gaiman wasn't getting any royalties. And the court found, again, that Gaiman was correct. So Todd had to settle. There were a few more legal proceedings around this subject, as far as I understand it. Basically, what ended up happening was that Gaiman ended up with sole possession of the rights to the Angela character. I believe Todd ended up with the rights to Medieval Spawn and Cagliostro. I'm not for sure on that one, to be honest. But Gaiman ended up featuring Angela in a series for Marvel because, it was his character. He could do what he wanted with it. And then he sold the rights to the character to Marvel, just as a fuck you to Todd, I'm pretty sure. So that is the epic battle of Gaiman v. McFarlane, and epic is the word. So next time we do a Spawn issue, we'll be doing Spawn number 10, the Cerebus crossover-ish, which, as I said, is a team-up revisit with my buddy. So definitely drop by for that one. It's a bit of a long one, but we get into some pretty involved conversation, as it's subject matter that we're both very familiar with. But yeah, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks very much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notification so you know when the next one's coming out. Go subscribe on my Patreon. That'll give you access to everything I do, from the Blood Force stuff, the pages and finished comics, as well as the YouTube videos before they get uploaded to YouTube, and some Patreon exclusive content. You can also follow me on Instagram and DM me there for commissions. I won't be doing any drawings of Spawn or Angela or Tony Twist, though, because I'll probably get sued by somebody, so fuck that shit. But yeah, that's going to do it. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.